English English scientific section by young researcher. Now we have five researchers and have presentation today. First of all, I would like to present Dr. Vũ Thị Huyền with the title "The Risks of Phone in Polypharmacy Patients."
Good morning, dear committee members and everyone. Thanks to Vietnam Geriatric Association for giving me an opportunity to submit and present our research. I am Vũ Thị Huyền from Hanoi Medical University, and today I would like to present our research with the title of Phones in the Older Patients with Polypharmacy. First, I would like to talk briefly about the background of our research. WHO has defined a phone as an event in which a person coming to rest inadvertently on the ground or floor or other lower level. 28 to 35% of the older have fallen. It can lead to serious consequences such as injury, fracture, loss of mobility, even death. According to CDC of the US, in 2030, there will be 74 million older adults. Among them, there will be 49 million phones. There are two main risk factors of phones. First one, intrinsic factors. Second one, extrinsic factors. And there are many intrinsic factors such as drug treatment, diseases, fear of phones, autonomic nervous system disorder, dependent in daily activity, and etc. But in our research, we focus on one intrinsic factor, drugs treatment, and particularly polypharmacy. So what is polypharmacy? Polypharmacy was defined as simultaneously taking 5 or more medications. Prevalence of polypharmacy in the older were from 5 to 78%. Polypharmacy increased prevalence of phones by 14% worldwide. Phones comorbidity, polypharmacy are causally related. Due to the symptom of the disease, the patient may phone. Polypharmacy increases the risk of phone by increasing drug interaction, toxicity, and side effect. The consequences of phones may lead to increase the number of the drug that the patient have to use and increase the number of the disease of the patient. There are some researchers in the world published about this issue, such as a research of Freeland in 2012 with a sample 195 participants aged from 65 years old. The results of this research was polypharmacy increased risk of phones by 14%. But in Vietnam, there are few research about this issue that published, so we conducted our research with two objectives. The first one, to determine prevalence of phones and risk of phones in older patients with and without polypharmacy treated at National Geriatric Hospital. Second one, to estimate associations between phones and polypharmacy and other factors in this population. Our research was cross-sectional descriptive study conducted from October 2017 to August 2018 at National Geriatric Hospital. Inclusion criteria include the patient as from 60 years old, agreed to participate in our research. Exclusion criteria include the patient unable to complete the test, refused to participate in the study, patients with cognitive impairment such as dementia, lethargy, paralysis, and pet immobilization. We applied sample size formula for a proportion of population, and in our research, we conducted in 435 participants. We applied convenient sampling, and after collected the sample, we divide the participant onto two groups, non-polypharmacy group and polypharmacy group. After that, we assess risk of phone and prevalence of phones in each group and the other factor that associated with increased risk of phone. We recruited demographic data, arthropometric index, medical history, medication of the patient. We assess phone by questionnaire, risk of phones by time up and go test, functional risk test, the handed-to forest model, assess polypharmacy by questionnaire. As you can see in the slide, are three tests that we use in our research. The first one, time up and go test. Second one, rich test, and third one, the Hendrix 2 Fluid model. We also recruited geriatric geriatric syndrome by depression by GDS-15, assess sleep disturbance by the BSQI, assess daily activities by IDL and IIDL. After collecting the data, we use SPS software version 22 to process the data with the p-value is lower than 0.05, and we strictly follow the medical ethics council. Now I would like to switch to the results of our research. The mean age of the participants were 72.2. Approximately half of the participants were normal BMI and under high school. The mean number of diseases were 2.27. The mean number of drugs were 4.4. Nearly 60% of the participants have a high dependency in IDL and IIDL. Nearly 16% of the participants have sleep disturbance. 16% of the patients have depression. The prevalence of polypharmacy in the participants were 55.4%, and this result was slightly lower than the result of multi-exam research in 2015 because our research was conducted on outpatient, but multi-exam research work was conducted in inpatient. The prevalence of falls were 31%, and this result was similar to the research of WHO in 2008 about fall prevention in the older patient. The prevalence of falls of the polypharmacy group were 14% higher than the non-polypharmacy group. Risk of falls assessed by tax test, functional risk test, the Hendrix 2 Forest model were 53.3%, 62.8%, and 46.8% respectively. Polypharmacy increased the prevalence of falls, previous falls, recurrence falls, injurious falls require hospitalization also. There are some drug categories that increase the prevalence of falls, such as antihypertensive agents, diabetes drugs, Parkinson drugs, benzodiazepines, and this result was similar to the previous researches. We use uni and multivariate logistic regression to assess risk factor of falls in the group of older patients with polypharmacy, and we found out that using alcohol-dependent ADL, underweight, sleep disturbance, and depression were the independent factors that increased the risk of fall. And this result was similar to the previous research also. Now I would like to talk about the conclusions. The prevalent falls within previous 12 months in polypharmacy group were 37.8%, in non-polypharmacy group were 23.4%. The prevalence of high risk of falls according to tax test, functional risk test, the Hendrix 2 Forest model were 53.3%, 62.85%, 46.8% respectively. Polypharmacy increased prevalence of falls, prevalence of recurrence falls, and prevalence of injurious falls. Using alcohol, dependence on ADL, underweight, sleep disturbance, depression, and independent factors that increase risk of falls. We also have two recommendations. First one, the issue of prescribing in the elderly should be strictly controlled in order to reduce older people with polypharmacy to a minimum so that we can prevent fall in this population. The second one, screening for fall risk should be done for older patients with polypharmacy, especially those with underweight, sleep disturbance, dependent ADL, using alcohol, and depression. Thank you for your listening, and we are looking forward to receiving your valuable comment.
The second presentation, Fall and Associated Factors in Diabetic Patients, presented by Dr. Nguyễn Bá Huỳnh.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nguyễn Ba Huỳnh from Hanoi Medical University. Today, I'm very happy and honored to stay here to make a presentation about our research, force and associated factors in elderly patients with diabetes. We come to the overview of force. Force is popular in the older, with the prevalence is the 28 to 35%, followed to WHO in 2007, and over 1/4 of adults over the age of 65 fall in the US each year, and frequency of falls increases with age and frailty levels. Fall is the first cause of injury related to death in people over 65 years old, and fall can lead to complicated consequences. Every 19 minutes, an older adult dies as the result of falls, and follow Yukochiba, falls twice as high as in diabetic patients compared to control subjects. And in the world, there are many research about that issue, but Vietnam is not much. So we conduct our research with two objectives. The first one is to determine the prevalence of falls in diabetes elderly patients that will receive treatment in National Geriatric Hospital. The second one is to estimate factors associated with risk of fall in this population. Falls definition followed to WHO in 2007 is that advertently coming to rest on the ground, floor, or other levels, excluding intentional change in position to rest furniture, wall, or other subjects. Risk factor for falls can be divided into groups, intrinsic and extrinsic. Intrinsic contains medication like polypharmacy, the patient characteristic such as the body weight, higher gender, body mass index, the comorbidity such as the heart failure, COPD. The extrinsic factor contain the patient care issues, the environment like the slippery floor, the poor vision of the patients. And followed to IDF in 2017, the adult people with diabetes range from 65 to 79 years old is nearly 100 million and estimate up to 200 million in 2045. And follow research of National Hospital Endocrinology in 2002, poor proportion is 2.7% and up to 6% in 2012. And the factors that increase the risk of falls in elderly patients with diabetes are hypoglycemia, visual problems, the functional impairment, depressive, postural hypertension, and the complication of diabetes such as the PAD, foot ulcers. And there are many research that in the world about that falls in diabetic patient, and the prevalence is different. Such as the follow the Vonpata, the falls prevalence is 26.5%, and there are many related factors such as the insulin therapy, decreasing physical activities, the poor balance score, and HbA1c over 8%, the hypoglycemia, tau and GO, and fall risk index score. In our research, we use the inclusion criteria with the patient from 60 years old divided into two groups, non-diabetic and diabetic, that those people were diagnosed with the WHO criteria in 2006, and they agreed to participate in. The exclusion is the patient unable to complete the test, the patient with cognitive impairments such as coma, dementia, paralysis, and bad immobilizations. And the most important thing that they refuse to participate in this study. This is a cross-sectional descriptive study conducted in National Geriatric Hospital from October 2017 to August 2018. With P equal to 0.25, followed to Yang research in 2016. The answer sample size to be 201 participants, and our research have 228 participants. And you can see the common characteristic of a patient about age, gender, living place, educational levels, life characteristics, body mass index, blood pressure. The variable about the related factor with diabetes such as HbA1c, fasting glucose, hypoglycemia, retinopathy, neuropathy, and foot ulcers. We assess the related factor about falls through the questionnaire, assess the risk of fall through the fall risk index with the cutoff over test score is the high risk. The time and go over 12 seconds is high risk, and the risk that less than 20 centimeters is high risk. We also assess the daily activity through the ADL, IADL, through depression through the DDS-15, and this research compiled to the ethical consideration with the purpose to improve health of the community, and data analysis has statistical significance with p less than 0.05. And you can see the research process diagram. The patient will be divided into two groups, diabetes and non-diabetes, and then they through the questionnaire, interview, motor test, index, and we collect, process, and analyze the data. We have the objective 1 and objective 2. And about we come to the result of our research, that there's no difference in age and gender distribution between two groups. It's similar to the result of Day2 and Chiba in 2015. And the people in diabetic group have a high rate of decreased IDL, depression, polypharmacy, and is the higher than the result of Wolpato in 2005 with decreased IDL and depression. And the history of falls in the previous year, recurrent fall in the previous year is higher in the diabetic group compared to the non-diabetic groups, and is similar to the result of Chiba in 2015 with p less than 0.05. And we found out that tuberculosis, that is the place that people with diabetes usually get fall, and with p less than 0.05 higher than the non-diabetic patient. And loose balance is the risk of fall injury requiring hospitalization in older patients with diabetes, similar to Rebecca result in 2013. And a patient with HbA1c over 8% is the risk of fall injury require hospitalization, similar to result of Rebecca, which be less than 0.05. And decreased IDL, depression, polypharmacy related to the high rate of history of fall and recurrent falls in the previous year. And high fall risk index score, long term and go, and limitation of risk that relate to the fall and recurrent fall in diabetic patient with p less than 0.05. Here the univariate logistic that we found out that with the advanced age really restricted in IDL, the high fall index score and HbA1c over 8% increase the rate of fall and recurrent falls. You can see that with ADL less than 5 increase the recurrent fall near to 10 times with p less than 0.05. And with multivariate logistic, we found out that IDL less than 5, GDS-15 over 6, and HbA1c over 8% increase of falls in the previous year, and recurrent fall that too many times with IDL less than 5 increase the recurrent fall near 5 times with p less than 0.05. And we have conclusion that the falls in history is the 43.4%, fall is the previous year is the 31.1%, and recurrent falls is the 13.6%, is higher compared to the non-diabetic patient with p less than 0.05. And the factor associated with falls in elderly patients with diabetes are advanced age, decline in daily functioning, depression, polypharmacy, and the high risk of fall are the high fall risk index score, long-term up and go duration, and functional limitations. The factor that associated with increased incidence of recurrent falls are IDL less than 5, GDS-15 over 6, insulin therapy, and HbA1c over 8%. And we have to recommend the fall risk using the fall risk index scale, time and go test, and risk function for the elderly patients, especially with the patient with decline in daily functioning, depression, HbA1c over 8%. Thank you for listening. I'm very happy to make present today. Thank you.
I know that there are some problem with connection with Miss Kim Chi. So I would like to invite Lê Ngọc Ánh. The next presenter is Lê Ngọc Ánh, with the title A Presentation on Constipation and its Associated Factor in Hypertension on the Others. Please.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear Professor, Chairman, and committee members. My name is Lê Ngọc Ánh. I would like to present my study named Constipation and its Associated Factors in Hypertension of the Adult. Constipation is one of common gastrointestinal disorder and is most frequent in age from 65 years old, with prevalence from 50 to 20%, even reach 50%. In Vietnam, it varies from 28% to 50%. Constipation has been reported to be linked to the occurrence of cardiovascular events which had hypertension considered as the first risk factor. Both constipation and hypertension increasing with age. Rumford is used to diagnose constipation. Rumford criteria include 2 or more following symptoms appear at least 25 occasions, and lumpy and harsh stool is type 1 and type 2 in a Bristol form scale. Criteria fulfilling for at least 3 months with onset at least 6 months before diagnosis. Hypertension and some related factor with constipation. Those factors were reported to having association with constipation in many previous studies: physical activities, age and gender, diet, comorbidity, quality of life, and medication such as calcium channel blockers, angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, and diuretic. Prevalence of constipation in the world from 15 to 27%, even reached 50%, and in Vietnam, in study of Hồ Thị Kim Thanh have shown 34.7% of the adults have in constipation. In Vietnam, there was a limited published study in those areas, so our study first to evaluate the prevalence of constipation in hypertension of the adult, and second, assess the association between constipation and its related factor in hypertension of the adult. Our method and subjective inclusion criteria: hypertensive diagnosis beyond the criteria of Vietnam National Heart Association from age 60 years old, having ability to have face-to-face interview, and our exclusion criteria including not willing to participate and with mental disorder, inability to communicate. The study was conducted from July-October 2020 in National Geriatric Hospital by descriptive cross-sectional design with convenient sampling. This formula was used in our study, and from that estimated sample size equal 348. There are variables we used in our study, including social demographic information, hypertension characteristic, BMI, constipation characteristic, and geriatric characteristic. First, process of data coding in trying to recap, then analysis was done by SPSS version 2020. Statistical significance was accepted at the 95% confidence level. About ethical consideration, the results were proposed for improving health of community. Social demographic and characteristic. The age range from 60 years old to 96 years old, which were divided into 3 groups here. And among participants, 54.8 were female. 33% of participants were classified as normal weight according to BMI. Hypertension characteristic, duration of hypertension from 5 to 10 years of duration accounted the highest prevalence, which were 38.1%. The proportion of participants having currently used antihypertensive medication noticeably dominate those who have not taken medication. About nutrition status, more than half of them were identified as at risk of malnutrition. The participants had maximum 10 diseases, while some other only had one disease, which was hypertension, with 5.7%. 34.4% of the world participants indicated that they have diabetes. This lipidemia was second frequent occur with hypertension. After that was stroke and heart failure. According to Rome 4 criteria, the prevalence of chronic constipation was 39.2%, and the prevalence was higher due to self-reported constipation, which was 58.5%. This trend was similar to study a pair among Canadian adult population. Among 8 criteria, straining was the most worrisome symptom among participants. After that was lumpy or hard stool, and the third one was fewer than 3 defecation per week. The prevalence of constipation in older participants with age from 70 was higher than those less than 70 years old, and the prevalence of male participants with constipation was higher than female with constipation, and there was no significant difference. A similar pattern of result was obtained in study of Hồ Thị Kim Thành. It has been reported that women in perimenopausal period have greater risk to suffer from constipation, which could result from fluctuation in female sexual hormones and feelings. However, the difference was not significant statistic in prevalence of constipation, especially among hypertension older population, and the cause or effect association was not established well yet in study of Amsterdam. Further study to evaluate are needed to figure this point. There was significant association between frequency of vegetable intake, water consumption, and physical activity based on IPAQ with constipation. Among 5 most common diseases presented in this study, heart failure, Parkinson, and hemiplegia and diabetes has significant association with constipation with a p-value less than 0.05. Heart failure is heart diseases which show the significant difference in patients with and without constipation in the study of Morzi. There were significant difference between patients use CCBs as well as ACEI and diuretic with constipation. A similar pattern of result was obtained in study of Lecasa, which indicated that relative risk of developing constipation was far with the amlodipine alone group. ADL and IADL has significant relation with constipation. Urinary incontinence had significant association with constipation in this study. A similar conclusion was reached by study of Kinuran, which indicated that prevalence of constipation was directly correlated to urinary incontinence in the hospital patient. Vegetable intake, water consumption, Parkinson, diabetes mellitus, 2, CCB were reconfirmed in multivariable regression model. In conclusion, prevalence of constipation in hypertension older patients, according to Rome 4 criteria, was 39.2%, and self-reported, which was 58.5%. Vegetable intake, water consumption, Parkinson, diabetes mellitus, CCP were reconfirmed in multivariable regression model. And there was higher risk according to the group which have water consumption, comorbidity, urinary incontinence, physical activity, and using medication. Our recommendation was first, comprehensive geriatric assessment for hypertension people should include constipation. And the second is increasing frequent vegetable intake per day are needed in hypertension people. Thank you so much for your listening.
Amazing presentation. And now I would like to introduce the next speaker. I have been informed that Miss Nguyễn Thị Kim Chi has the connection again. So now she will present about sleep disturbance and its associated factors in older patients with type 2 diabetes. So please, Miss Kim Chi.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Professor Chairman and the committee member, my name is Nguyễn Thị Kim Chi, and I would like to present my study named Sleep Disturbance and its Associated Factors with Type 2 Diabetes. Under the supervision of medical doctor Nguyễn Thị Thu Hương, my report is including 5 parts. The first part is background. Sleep disorders are common in later life and is commonly seen in type 2 diabetes. The prevalence of poor sleep quality among this population ranges from 45 to 75%, and it has been considered as a risk factor for poor glycemic control in type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is a chronic condition of public health and its prevalence increases with age. According to the International Diabetes Federation in 2019, the prevalence of older patients with type 2 diabetes was 19.3%, and good blood glucose control can promote the effectiveness of patient treatment process as well as decrease severe complications. In Vietnam, there are very few studies about the association between sleep disturbance and glycemic control in older patients with type 2 diabetes. Therefore, this study was conducted for 2 subjects. The first subject is determine the prevalence of sleep disturbance in older people with type 2 diabetes. And the second is evaluate the association between sleep disturbance and glycemic control and other factors in older patients with type 2 diabetes. This study was cross-sectional study and was researched at the National Geriatric Hospital from March to October in 2012. About questionnaire, we focus on 4 groups of variables. The first is general information. The second is characteristic of diabetes. The third is sleep disorder, and we use PSQI and ESQ. The last is associated factors. It's including physical activities, nutrition, depression, functional status, urinary incontinence, cognition, and pain. This research was entered later into record and analyzed by SPSS software with statistical significance less than 0.05. After enrolling 178 participants in older patients with type 2 diabetes, the following result was shown. The mean age of participants was 73.54 years old, and the group of over or equal than 70 years was majority. Almost participant was female. The percentage of patients had current smoking and current drinking was small. The blood pressure more than 130 over 85 millimeter mercury prevalent. in both male and female group was small, and half of patients had more BMI. In this population, the prevalence of patients was HbA1c level over than 7% was 55.6%, and fasting blood glucose over than 7.2 millimole per liter was 59.6%. In this study, almost patients had peripheral nerve complication, diabetic retinopathy, and hypoglycemia. Most of participants in this study had IADL-dependent chronic pain, risk of malnutrition and malnourished, and lower activities. In this study, we identified that prevalence of sleep disturbance by using PSQI was 67.4%, and it was higher than your study in 2014. There were 21.9% participants had excessive daytime sleepiness. This was lower than Casey study in 2015. This difference in result can be explained by difference in research subject and mean of age between study. The mean of PSQI score was 10.63, and it was higher than research of laser in 2018. The sleep latency in this population was 54 minutes. It was higher than Hongdao research in 2019. The mean of total bedtime in this population was 7 hours. Otherwise, the sleep duration was 5 hours. It was the same find in Hongdao research above. This study considered that there was significant association between poor sleep quality and HbA1c concentration with p-value less than 0.05. It was the same find in Casey's study in 2015. There was no statistical significant association between sleep quality and fasting blood glucose level. It was similar with your study in 2014. And patients had HbA1c level over than 7%, had sleep duration and sleep efficiency was shorter than those with HbA1c less than 7%, with p-value less than 0.05. And patient with poor sleep was risk factor increase HbA1c 2.4 times than those with normal sleep quality. The prevalence of patients with poor sleep quality was higher significant association than those with normal sleep quality in patients had diabetic retinopathy, peripheral nerve complication, cerebrovascular disease, and many complications. We found that cholesterol level in patients with poor sleep quality was significantly higher than those with normal sleep quality with p-value less than 0.05. In multivariable regression model, HbA1c level over than 7%, cholesterol level, cerebrovascular disease, and total of complication were risk factor increased prevalence of poor sleep quality in older patients with type 2 diabetes. To summarize this study, there are two conclusions. The first, the prevalence of sleep disturbance in older patients with type 2 diabetes was 64.7% by using PSQI scale and 21.9% by using ESS scale. Almost patients had subjective sleep quality, sleep latency, sleep duration, and sleep efficiency at very bad or very bad level. And poor sleep quality will significantly increase the risk of HbA1c level over than 7%, and patients with HbA1c level over than 7% had sleep duration, sleep efficiency significantly lower than those with HbA1c less than 7%. And there are HbA1c level over than 7%, cholesterol level, cerebral vascular disease, and total complication were risk factor increased prevalence of poor sleep quality in older patients with type 2 diabetes. And after all, I think that we need early screening sleep disturbance by performing PSQI and ESS tests in type 2 diabetic older patients, especially screening on type 2 diabetic older patients had HbA1c level over than 7%, high cholesterol level, cerebral vascular disease, and many complications. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for your presentation. And now I would like to introduce the last presentation in this session. Prevalence of acute poisoning and related factors in elderly at Bạch Poison Control Center in 2019 by Miss Nguyễn Thị Việt Anh. So please, Miss Việt Anh.
Hello everyone, today I will present my study named Prevalence of Poisoning and Related Factor in Elderly Patients at Bạch Poison Control Center in 2019. As we know, when the number of elderly people increase, the number of acute poisoning cases occurring in elderly is also increasing and becoming one of the issues of concern for the health of the elderly. The elderly have their own physiological and pathological characteristics, so the characteristic of the condition of acute poisoning occurring in the elderly also differ from other ages. According to the study from Germany, so that the mortality rate of poisoning in people aged 65 and older is 9 times higher than the overall mortality rate of poisoning. In our country, there have been many studies on poisoning, but most of them focus on the issue of general poisoning at other ages. On certain types of agents, there are limited studies going into poisoning in elderly people. So we do the topic prevalence of poisoning and related factor in elderly patients at Bạch Poison Control Center in 2019. We have two main purposes. The first is identify prevalence of poisoning in elderly, and the secondly is assess on clinical, subclinical characteristics and treatment of poisoning in the elderly. We collect the patient when they 60 years old or older, and the patient with the diagnosed with acute poisoning and have one of the three following criteria: clinical manifestation of patient, there is evidence of intoxication, strictly toxic inspection discovering the drugs, toxic chemical in blood, gastric liquid, and urine. We don't take the patient, do not apply enough information according to the research records. The patient has not completed the course of treatment. I do this research during 1 month, and the medical records are taken from January to August at Bạch Hospital. I do retrospective descriptive study based on IPCF form. This is IPCF form. About the content of questionnaire, we have the first is general information from from 8:01 to 8:29. And about the agents, we have 8:30 to 8:40. About the patient, we have 8:41 to 8:56. About the data collection method, we enter data on recap software, analysis by using SPSS software version 22. Descriptive statistics were reports as mean and standard deviation, minimum, maximum, chi-square test was used to find out the difference between rate and t-test was used for compare means. Independent sample t-test to compare means. Statistical significance was considered to be statistically significant if the value less than 0.5. When the data collected was used for the research, the result of the study were proposed for improving health of community, not for other purposes. According to the result of this study, the age group most commonly poisoned is from 60 to 69 years old with 189 cases. The number of elderly patients with poisoning tends to increase in the April, July, and August. For the whole 8 months, the rate of female is higher than male. The majority of elderly patients admitted to the poisoning puncture in unintentional cases. The most poisoning agent is caused by the bite of a poisonous animal, 44.6%, followed by pharmaceutical. Poisoning mainly occur and ingestion poisoning accounted for the highest proportion, followed by the bite, ending 53.8% and 41.1%. The poisoning mainly occurs home with 72.1%, in which animal and pharmaceutical, pesticide, and food are mainly caused by poisoning. Among patients with poisoning, the patient history of heart disease is the most affected, when the disease of digestive, endocrine, metabolic. This in our study, up to 47.5 of moderate PAS in trial, while 30.4% of patients has life-threatening severe symptoms. This may be explained by the fact that in the elderly, their physiological changes that make the symptom of poisoning appear more pronounced and lasting. The dermatological symptoms are most common, followed by gastrointestinal symptoms. The group intestinal acute poisoning patient has a worse onset of illness than other group of patients. Accidental is the leading cause of intentional poisoning, 66.02%, and animal is the most leading cause. Suicide is the leading cause of intentional poisoning, 71.43% in intentional cases. And pesticide is the most leading cause, 88. And the pesticide is the most leading cause at 46.67%. The group of agents who are pharmaceutical has the highest rate of patients hospitalized in the most severe condition. And the duration of treatment at Patient Care Center, the shortest treatment time is less than 1 day. The longest treatment period is 67 days on the each patient, and the patient took at least one medicine and a smoothie used 15 drugs at the same day. And about the treatment, fluids and electrolyte IV treatment are used the most, 94.18%, followed by antivenom, 21.09%. The majority of poisoning patients treated at the Poison Control Center are cured, 52.7%. There were 102 patients, accounting for 37% discharged from hospital with complications. 28 patients was died. Poisoning in intentional circumstances result in a higher death rate, accounting for 28.13% compared to unintentional, 4.85%. The mortality rate in pesticide group was highest, for 4.36%, followed by the pharmaceutical group, 1.82%. The limitation of this study, the fact that the study was conducted retrospectively, it was not possible to find complete information in all patient medical charts. In addition, socio-economic factors like religion and level of income was not considered among the factors in measuring prevalence and outcome of acute poisoning. In summary, poisoning increase occurs in older women more than men, and the age group from 60 to 79 years old is the most poisoning group. The main toxic agent is animal pharmaceutical and pesticide. Many poisoning caused by accident. Pesticide was accounting for 71.43% of cases of intentional poisoning. Poisoning mainly occurs at home. Animal and pharmaceutical pesticide are mainly caused by poisoning at home, but the clinical and subclinical and therapeutic characteristic, the major patient enter a moderate condition. Suicide patients have worse condition than other groups at admission. Average duration of treatment is 3.4 days. They use an average of 4.8 drugs a day. The majority of patients recovered from completely. The mortality rate is 10.1% higher than the study in other age groups. Poisoning in intentional circumstance results in a higher death rate. The mortality rate in pesticide group was highest. But the recommendation in enhancing the caring attitude of the family and the society on the mental and physical health for the elderly to detect early signs of mental illness, thus reducing the rate of suicide among elderly patients. Thank you for listening. Any question?
Thank you all for amazing presentations, and I have two minor questions for the presenters. The first one is for the first presentation by Dr. Huyền. What do you think about the reasons of the risk of high risk of falling in patients with the NSAID? Do you think that because they have the rheumatology disease, so it is just the co-current condition? And the second question is for the presenter with the constipation presentation. So how many percent of the patient require the laxative drugs due to constipation? Thank you. The first presenter, Dr. Huyền, can you hear me clearly? Dr. Vũ Thị Huyền, maybe she's not here. How about the presenter of constipation, Miss Lê Ngọc Ánh? Are you here? Can you hear me clearly? How many percent of your patients require the laxative drugs due to constipation?
About the laxative, we do conduct about that later. Yeah.
Okay,
Because
so
we only based on self-reported, and it's not regular.
Because
So
I think because I think their constipation condition occur for a long time, so maybe they have used the laxative drugs at home before admitting to hospital. So do you have any comments or explanation about the relationship between diabetes and constipation? Because you have a high percentage of patients with both diabetes and constipation. So have you read about the relationship between these two diseases?
Previous study also have shown the relation between constipation and diabetes, and in our study they also show that it was the association between constipation and diabetes, and we recommend that further study needed to figure this point. Yeah.
Thank you. I think from this point, maybe we can explain by the mechanism of the hypomotility of the GI tract in a diabetes patient. I haven't seen Dr. Vũ Thị Huyền from the audience, but I see Dr. Nguyễn Bá Huỳnh here. So would you like to explain my question about your hypothesis between NSAID and the risk of fall? Would you like to give any comments? And while waiting for the response from Dr. Huyền and Dr. Huỳnh, I also would like to give the thanks to all of the presenters, and especially I know that there are several studies that require a lot of efforts to conduct. For example, I really impressive with the presentation of sleep disturbance and the presentation on the acute poisoning, because it also raised many ideas. For example, regarding to the study of acute poisoning, I'm very wonder about the percentage of patients with suicide in the elderly. So I think maybe you can analyze also about the depression in such kind of a subgroup, and it will be interesting. So Dr. Huỳnh, could you hear our question? I asked the question for your study, and Dr. Huyền about what is the mechanism or hypothesis regarding NSAID use and the risk of fall. It's okay. Because in the chat box now, I haven't seen any questions. So if you guys do not have any question, on behalf of Professor Vũ Thị Thanh Huyền, I would like to give the sincere thanks to all of the presenters as well as the audience. And I also would like to close this session and wish that you will have the half session in this afternoon successfully. Thank you for your attention in this session. and see you soon. Goodbye.